A quiet silence filled the endless void of the galaxy as stars burned far away and civilizations thrived in their little pockets of light, but in every corner of the galaxy, in every crowded marketplace and every academy hall, there was a whisper about the ones who came before them, a race that was so powerful and so strange that nobody could decide if they had ever really existed, and that race was humanity. Some called them destroyers of worlds, some called them saviors, some even claimed they were gods who walked among mortals, but most laughed and dismissed the stories as nothing more than myths told to frighten young ones or to glorify old battles that had long faded into dust. Yet the whispers remained, carried from one system to another by merchants, smugglers and travelers who swore they had heard someone somewhere speak of the humans. Alien scholars argued endlessly about the subject in grand halls of learning, their voices echoing against walls of polished crystal and stone. One old historian with scales of silver spoke with fire in his eyes, declaring that humans were real, that they once commanded fleets that could darken the skies and armies that shook planets to their core. But younger scholars shook their heads and smirked, calling him a fool. They asked, where were the ruins, where were the artifacts, where was the proof of such beings? If they were real, surely something would remain, yet all they had were fragments, half-burned records, scattered carvings on forgotten moons, and songs that spoke of fire, steel, and endless courage. In crowded taverns under neon light, smugglers told darker tales. They said that humans were not gone, but hiding, waiting, watching from the cold black beyond the rim where no one dared to travel. They whispered that one day the humans would return, and when they did, the galaxy would tremble as it once did long ago. No one knew whether to believe these tales. Some laughed, some shivered, and others quietly marked trade routes to avoid the rim just in case. Generations passed and the stories grew weaker. Many declared that the myth of humanity was finally fading, that the galaxy had moved on beyond childish fears, but not everyone was convinced. There were still those who studied the shadows, those who believed the stories held some hidden truth, for in every myth there is a seed of reality, and in every forgotten song there is a memory waiting to awaken. Far beyond the reach of most civilizations, in a lonely listening post, a group of alien operators monitored the void. They were bored with their duties, yawning over stale meals as endless streams of empty data scrolled across their screens. Days and years passed with nothing ever changing, until one ordinary cycle, a faint signal, brushed against their scanners. It was weak, distorted, almost erased by time, but it carried a rhythm, a pattern that made one operator freeze. He leaned closer, adjusting the dials, his many eyes widening as he realized what he was seeing. It was not random static, it was structured, it was language. He called the others over. They crowded the console, muttering in disbelief, and the youngest among them whispered the word that had been almost banned from being spoken: human. The signal carried fragments of ancient coding, an echo of something long thought lost. They recorded it, they replayed it, they analyzed it again and again, but the more they studied, the more convinced they became. This was not a trick, this was not a false alarm, this was real. Fear spread through the listening post like fire. The crew argued about what to do. Some wanted to erase the signal, to pretend it never happened, for if they reported it, the galaxy would erupt in chaos, but others demanded they transmit it immediately, and so the signal was carried out across the network into the hands of governments, war councils and information guilds, and within days the whisper of humanity returned louder than ever. Markets buzzed with the news. Some claimed the signal was fake, planted by pirates or rebels trying to scare the powerful federations, but the evidence grew stronger as more stations across the rim confirmed receiving the same strange echoes. It was not a single pulse, it was many, like a heartbeat, growing louder and closer. In the capital of a great alien empire, the High Council gathered in secret, their chamber lit by the glow of distant stars projected on crystal walls. One counselor slammed his clawed hand on the table, declaring that this was impossible. Humanity had been gone for millennia, erased from history itself. Another countered that history can be rewritten, but legends always return, and perhaps this was the day their greatest fear had come true. Meanwhile, out in the frontier, far from the polished halls of power, a lone smuggler drifted through deep space, his small vessel creaking as he carried stolen goods to a hidden station. He had no interest in myths or legends until his scanners caught something strange: shadows moving among the stars, too large to be asteroids, too silent to be known fleets. He stared at the display, his scales turning cold as the shadows formed patterns, formations, military precision. He adjusted his optics, and what he saw made him drop his drink: human symbols etched into black hulls. His ship shook as the shadows passed, massive vessels moving without a sound, their presence alone crushing the air from his lungs. He dared not send a message, he dared not move for hours. He drifted in silence as the unknown fleet vanished into the darkness. Finally, with trembling hands, he activated his recorder and fled. When he reached the station, he rushed into the crowded marketplace, shouting about ghost fleets and human warships. At first they laughed, mocking his fear, but then he played the recording and the laughter died. The image flickered across the room, hulls darker than space itself, ships that moved like predators in the night, and a single symbol burned into the metal, a human mark forgotten for thousands of years. The station erupted in chaos, words spread like wildfire. Some said it was proof humanity was returning, others said it was an elaborate trick, yet deep in their hearts they all felt the same cold weight pressing down, because if those ships were real, then the legends were true and the galaxy was no longer safe. Across distant worlds fear grew, governments denied it, corporations tried to silence it, but the people whispered anyway, the word they were forbidden to speak: human. And in the endless void where no one could see far beyond the rim, the shadows of massive fleets drifted closer, their engines silent, their weapons hidden, their formation unbroken, waiting, watching, preparing for the moment when the galaxy would finally know the truth that humans were never myths, they were never gone, they were only waiting for the right time to return. The alien smuggler stumbled into the crowded starport, his scales pale, his eyes wide, his voice trembling as he gasped for air and shouted about shadows in the sky. The crowd laughed, at first calling him drunk, calling him a liar, but when he raised the small recorder in his clawed hand, the laughter faded, replaced by silence and unease. He pressed the button and the device flickered to life, showing grainy images across the smoky air. The projection revealed massive shapes gliding through the darkness of space, their outlines too sharp and too organized to be drifting rocks, their movements too controlled to be natural. The crowd pressed closer, murmuring their disbelief, until they saw the ancient mark carved into the hulls, a mark most of them had only seen in forbidden texts, the symbol of humanity. Gasps filled the air, some turned away, whispering curses, others froze in place, unable to breathe. The smuggler swore on his life that he had seen them, that they had passed his ship without a sound, that their presence had felt like a storm pressing against his very bones. He said he had wanted to scream, he had wanted to flee, but his ship had been nothing more than a leaf before a hurricane. He had stayed still, praying they would not notice him, and when they finally vanished into the black, he swore. He heard a faint signal echoing through the void, a sound like a voice but too old and broken to understand. The marketplace erupted into chaos. Some shouted that it was a trick, that pirates were playing games with old myths to frighten fools. Others argued that the images were too clear, too precise to be false. No pirate fleet could have built ships that large, no ordinary smugglers could have forged that symbol. The whispers began again, spreading from mouth to mouth, spilling into alleys and taverns, carried to dockworkers and merchants who repeated the tale with growing fear. In a quiet corner of the station, a group of informants gathered, their faces hidden in shadow. They spoke quickly, passing the news through encrypted channels, and within hours the images reached the hands of guild leaders, warlords and governments across the sector. Each reacted differently. Some dismissed it, others grew paranoid, ordering fleets to scan their skies, searching for shadows among the stars. But one thing was certain, the story of humanity had been reborn. In the halls of a distant Federation council, the highest leaders gathered in secret, their chamber sealed from outside eyes. One leader with golden feathers slammed his wing against the table, declaring the recording false, claiming it was nothing more than smuggler lies. But another leader, older and slower, with skin like stone, spoke softly and reminded them that for centuries the whispers had never truly died, that their ancestors had written warnings of the humans that their fleets had once burned across entire systems, leaving behind both ruin and salvation. The chamber grew tense as the leaders argued. Some demanded to prepare for war, others begged for silence, fearing that panic would tear their civilizations apart. Meanwhile, the whispers reached the Academy's young scholars who had once mocked the old legends, now found themselves studying the fragments with new intensity. They replayed the recording frame by frame, searching for every detail. Some argued about the design of the hulls, others pointed out the precision of the formation. No random fleet could move with such silent unity. The more they studied, the more they feared, and the more they believed. In taverns across alien cities, the story grew larger with every telling. The smuggler's simple recording became a tale of hundreds of ships, of weapons glowing with fire, of voices that spoke in thunder. Some claimed the humans had already destroyed entire colonies, others swore they had seen wreckage drifting in secret carrying human markings. No one could prove the truth, but the fear itself was real, and it spread faster than any ship. The smuggler who had first told the tale found himself hunted. Some wanted to silence him forever, others wanted to buy his recording for fortunes. He hid in shadows, moving from station to station, but everywhere he went the whispers followed him. He could hear strangers repeating his own words, twisted and changed until even he was unsure what had been real and what had been born of fear. Yet he remembered clearly the way the shadows had moved across the stars. He remembered the crushing silence of their presence. He remembered the symbol glowing like a wound across black steel, and he knew it had been no dream. Deep in the void, patrol fleets began to vanish, entire ships gone without a trace. At first the governments denied it, but the reports piled higher. Officers spoke of strange radar echoes, shadows moving at impossible speed, sensors that picked up nothing until it was too late. Survivors, if there were any, spoke of feeling watched, of seeing glimmers of massive shapes that dissolved into nothing when chased. The whispers grew louder now, no longer only stories but warnings. On one lonely mining moon, workers paused their drills. As their sky darkened, they looked up and saw lights moving silently above them, too straight, too sharp to be natural. The shapes blotted out the stars, then vanished as quickly as they had come. The workers sent out frantic messages, but when the authorities arrived there was nothing to be found. The officials told them they had seen meteors, tricks of light reflections in the atmosphere, but the workers knew what they had seen, and the whispers spread again. Merchants began to alter their routes, avoiding the rim of the galaxy. Trade slowed as fear outweighed profit. Entire stations became ghost towns as citizens fled to the cause of their empires. Governments ordered news channels to stop speaking of humans, but the silence only fed the terror, because the absence of answers was more frightening than lies. Across the galaxy the phrase began to return, the word that had been buried for generations. Human. It was spoken in fear, or in secret prayers. Some begged the humans not to return, others begged for their return, hoping for salvation in a galaxy ruled by greed and corruption, but none could deny that the shadows were real and that they were drawing closer. The smuggler dreamed of them every night, the dark hulls gliding through endless black, the symbol burning in silence. He dreamed of the voice. He thought he had heard a broken whisper from the void. Sometimes it sounded like a warning, sometimes it sounded like a promise, but always it filled him with dread, and when he woke his hands trembled and his chest ached, because deep down he knew the humans were not just coming back, they were already here. The galaxy did not yet know what the humans wanted: conquest, revenge, or something worse, but the fear was enough. It bound them all together in a shared terror, a single truth uniting every species, every world, every station. The myths had become real, the whispers had become shadows, and the shadows were watching from the dark. The patrol ship drifted on the edge of alien territory, its crew tired and bored as another empty shift passed. The scanners buzzed softly, filling the control deck with a steady hum. Nothing ever happened in this sector, and most of the crew preferred it that way, far from wars, far from smugglers, just empty space and dull routine. But on this night the hum changed. It flickered as if the scanners had caught something unusual. One young officer leaned forward, blinking his 4 eyes as strange shapes appeared on the screen. At first he thought it was an error. The shapes were too large, too many, too well formed to be anything natural. He reset the system, but the images stayed. The captain, an old warrior with scarred skin, approached the console, his voice rough as he asked for a report. The officer stammered, saying he did not understand the readings. The scanners showed multiple objects moving in formation, not asteroids, not meteors, something else. The captain frowned, his mandibles twitching, and ordered a full scan. The deck grew tense as the hum of the scanners deepened. The results came back and silence fell over the crew. The shapes were ships. One by one the outlines sharpened on the display, black vessels darker than the void itself, moving with perfect precision in a silent line. The crew whispered nervously, their voices breaking as they asked who they belonged to. No empire, no guild, no known fleet had designs like these. Their hulls looked ancient yet powerful, smooth black steel with strange markings burned into the sides. One officer gasped, recognizing the mark from forbidden stories. It was the symbol of humanity. The captain snapped at him, ordering silence, but the word hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Human. The crew shifted nervously, their eyes wide, their hands shaking. The legends had returned. The captain ordered a hailing signal. He demanded identification, transmitting across all frequencies. The message echoed through the void, waiting for a response, but the black ships gave nothing, no sound, no signal, only silence. Minutes passed like hours. The patrol crew stared at the silent fleet drifting closer, their formation unbroken, their weapons dark but ready. The captain tried again, a second hail, then a third, his voice sharper each time, but the void answered with the same crushing silence. Fear spread through the crew. One officer whispered that the ships were not alive, that they were ghosts from the past. The captain silenced him, but even he felt the weight pressing against his chest. Then the largest of the ships moved forward, a massive vessel towering over the patrol ship, its shadow blotting out the stars, its presence overwhelming. The scanners screamed as power surged from within its core, the readings spiking higher than anything the crew had ever seen. One officer shouted that weapons were powering up. Panic spread across the deck. The crew demanded orders. The captain's mandibles tightened. He could feel every eye on him. The myths were no longer myths, they were real, and they were staring directly at him. He ordered evasive maneuvers. The patrol ship tilted, hard engines burning as it tried to retreat, but the massive black ship moved effortlessly, blocking their path. It did not fire, it did not speak, it only stood in their way like a predator testing its prey. The crew shouted in fear, some begging to flee, others begging to surrender. The captain's voice thundered over them, commanding calm, but even he could not steady his own trembling hands. The scanners picked up energy waves rising, the human ship's weapons glowing faintly like stars awakening. The crew held their breath, certain death was coming, but then the glow faded, the energy collapsed, and the massive vessel drifted back into formation. Once again the silence returned, more terrifying than any battle. The crew stared in disbelief. They did not understand why they had been spared. The captain knew he had to report what they had seen, but even as he prepared the message he wondered if anyone would believe him. The stories of humans had always been dismissed as myths, but now he had seen their fleet with his own eyes. He feared that sending this report would ignite chaos across the galaxy, but he feared even more what would happen if no one prepared. The fleet began to move again, silent shadows gliding through the darkness. The patrol ship followed at a distance, afraid to lose sight of them, but terrified to be noticed. The humans remained in formation, drifting with purpose, their direction clear. They were moving deeper into alien space, heading toward the heart of the galaxy. The captain finally transmitted his report, his voice steady, but his eyes filled with dread. He described the fleet, their design, their silence, their overwhelming power. He spoke the word no one wanted to hear: human. The report spread quickly through secure channels, reaching the ears of commanders and councils within hours across countless systems. Leaders read the words with disbelief, some laughed, dismissing it as madness, others fell into grim silence, knowing the truth had finally arrived. Meanwhile, on the patrol ship, the crew remained frozen in terror, their scanners fixed on the dark fleet as it drifted further away. Some whispered prayers, others cursed the day they had been assigned to this sector. The youngest officer trembled in his seat, whispering that the myths were real, that the humans had come back. The captain placed a heavy hand on his shoulder, his voice low and grim, saying this was only the beginning. Back in the heart of alien civilization, the report reached the highest council chambers, their walls glimmering with projected stars. The leaders argued furiously. Some demanded the patrol crew be silenced before their words spread further. Others demanded fleets be mobilized immediately. The chamber shook with voices rising louder and louder until one elder spoke, his voice calm but heavy. He reminded them that their ancestors had always warned of this day, that the humans were not gone, only waiting. And now the waiting was over. In the following days, fleets across the galaxy were placed on alert. Patrols doubled, scouts sent to every dark corner, but nothing could hide the fear that had taken root among the people. The whispers grew stronger, filling the markets, the taverns, the academies. Everywhere the same story was told of silent ships, of a symbol long forbidden, of a power that had vanished only to return when the galaxy had grown soft and unprepared. The patrol ship that had first seen the fleet became infamous, its crew interrogated again and again, their words dissected and studied, but no matter how the officials tried to twist their story, the truth remained unshaken. They had seen humanity's fleet with their own eyes, they had felt its shadow pass over them, and they knew it was only the beginning. The humans had not fired a shot, but their silence was louder than any weapon, their presence heavier than any battle, their fleet drifting closer with every hour, and across the galaxy billions of hearts trembled in fear because the legends had awakened and the stars would never be the same again. The galaxy was not ready for what the patrol ship had seen. The reports spread faster than fire on dry grass, traveling through hidden networks and encrypted channels. The word no one wanted to hear slipped into the ears of the powerful and the weak alike. Human across entire systems leaders called secret meetings, their voices trembling as they argued about what to do. Some shouted that the patrol crew had gone mad, others claimed it was only pirates playing tricks. But deep down, even the most stubborn could feel the same fear. The myths were not myths, the shadows were real, and the humans had returned. On the rim worlds, miners and farmers looked up at their skies with dread. Some swore they had seen dark shapes blotting out the stars, others claimed to hear voices in the static of their radios, words they could not understand but felt deep in their bones, whispers that chilled them even in the heat of their suns. Whole towns packed their belongings and fled toward the core worlds, abandoning their homes, leaving entire colonies as ghostly shells filled only with silence and fear. In the grand chambers of a mighty empire, the rulers argued, their jeweled crowns glittering under artificial light. One demanded that the humans be destroyed before they grew stronger, another hissed that such a thing was impossible. No fleet, no matter how large, could match the stories of human power their ancestors had written, of battles where whole armadas were erased in moments, where planets burned to ash under human weapons. The chamber fell quiet as an elder spoke, his voice weak but steady, reminding them that arrogance had been the downfall of those who first faced humanity long ago. His warning echoed in the silence, the humans were not to be underestimated. Meanwhile, the people whispered louder than ever in markets and taverns and crowded starports. The word human was spoken with fear, and or smugglers told tales of ghost fleets moving through the void. Merchants swore their trade convoys had been stalked by shadows. Whole crews refused to fly routes near the rim. Demand for transport away from the outer systems rose so high that ships were filled beyond capacity with refugees fleeing from a threat they had never seen but believed with all their hearts. Far beyond the panic, the human fleet drifted in silence, their ships massive and dark, moving like predators through the sea of stars. They spoke no words, they sent no messages, yet their presence was louder than any broadcast. Their silence was a roar. Entire fleets tracked them, but none dared to attack. Not yet. The humans moved with purpose, their course clear, deeper and deeper into alien space. In one council chamber of the United Federation, commanders sat around a long glowing table, the air heavy with tension. The head commander's claws tapped against the surface as he demanded answers. His generals shifted nervously, none dared to speak until one finally rose, his eyes dim. He said simply, "They are not testing us, they are reminding us." The council erupted with noise. Some demanded to strike first, others insisted on peace, but none could agree. Fear had stolen their reason. Across the galaxy, propaganda filled the network screens, lit with messages claiming that the human threat was only lies made to control the people. Officials smiled and spoke calmly, telling citizens to remain at peace, but in the shadows those same officials fortified their bunkers and moved their families to safer worlds. They knew the truth could not be hidden for long. In the middle of a crowded station, a broadcast cut through every screen and every speaker. The humans had spoken at last, their voice filled the air across thousands of systems. The words were simple and cold, "We were never gone, we were waiting." Silence followed, every being froze, every heart pounded. The voice was deep, ancient, filled with weight beyond comprehension. It was not a threat, not yet, but the meaning was clear. The humans had not disappeared, they had only chosen their moment to return. Panic spread faster than light. Whole systems shut down their trade routes, entire fleets scrambled to defensive positions, cities rioted as fear overtook order. The myths had become flesh and steel, and their silence was broken only by words that promised something far greater than anyone could imagine. Back on the rim, the patrol crew who had first seen the fleet remained under guard, their testimony repeated again and again, but no matter how many times they told the story, it did not change. The ships had been real, the weapons had been real, the silence had been real. The council demanded to know why the humans had spared them, but the crew had no answer, only fear in their eyes. The captain said finally, "They wanted us to see them, they wanted us to carry the story." In the dark halls of hidden academies, scholars dug through forgotten archives, pulling out ancient fragments of human history, songs that told of fire weapons that defied reason, strategies so ruthless and clever that no alien had ever matched them. The more they uncovered, the more they realized the galaxy had never understood the humans at all. They were not only warriors, they were builders, planners, dreamers who disappeared not because they were weak but because they had chosen to leave, and now they had chosen to return. On a frontier moon, a young worker stood outside at night staring at the sky. His people had laughed at the old legends his father had told him, but as he watched the stars blink out one by one behind a moving shadow, he knew the legends were real. He ran to his village shouting, but no one believed him until the shadow passed overhead, blotting out the moons themselves. The people screamed and fell to their knees, praying to gods they no longer trusted. The humans never spoke, never fired a shot, but their presence alone was enough to crush hope. In war rooms across the galaxy, plans were drawn, desperate strategies written, and erased, fleets gathered, weapons forged, but nothing felt enough, because how could they fight against a legend? How could they stand against something that had once ruled the stars and vanished without defeat? The leaders felt the same dread as their people, though they dared not show it in their speeches. Then came the second broadcast, short and sharp across every channel. "We are returning." The words struck harder than any weapon. They echoed in every mind, leaving questions unanswered, but filling every heart with the same dread. What were the humans returning for? Conquest, revenge, or something far worse? No one could guess, but everyone feared the answer. As the human fleet drew closer, the galaxy held its breath. Whole civilizations froze between panic and denial. Some fled, some prepared for war, some prayed, but none could escape the shadow that grew larger with every passing day. The silence of the fleet and the cold words they spoke were enough to change the stars themselves, for the legends had awoken, and the night no longer belonged to the galaxy, it belonged once more to humanity. The galaxy was burning with fear, entire networks filled with the same word, repeated in whispers, in shouts, in desperate prayers. Human fleets gathered across hundreds of systems. Commanders called soldiers to arms. Shipyards forged weapons faster than ever before, and for the first time in history, enemies became allies, united by terror. No one trusted each other, but they trusted even less the silence of the human fleet that moved ever deeper into their stars. The Grand Council of the Federation declared a call to arms, summoning fleets from every corner. Thousands of ships from dozens of species gathered in a single system, the chosen place of their stand. The sky above the barren world filled with steel wings glittering with lights. Weapons charged, soldiers chanted hymns of courage, but their voices cracked under the weight of dread. They were facing legends, not rivals. On the surface below, civilians watched the endless lines of warships stretching across the horizon. News broadcasts described the moment as the greatest gathering of power in known history. Never before had so many ships stood together, shoulder to shoulder, for a single cause. The commentators spoke bravely, their voices steady, but their eyes betrayed fear, because even with all this strength, even with all this unity, they wondered if it would matter. Far beyond, the system scanners picked up the shadows. The humans were coming, thousands of ships moving in perfect silence, their formation flawless, their speed relentless. The alien commanders argued, some wanted to strike early, others demanded to wait. One admiral shouted that if they fired first, humanity would destroy them all. Another argued that if they waited, they would die anyway. The chamber filled with voices until the supreme commander silenced them with a single sentence: "We will hold the line." The first wave appeared, massive black ships emerging from the void like nightmares made of steel. Their hulls absorbed the light around them, their symbols burned like scars across the metal. The alien fleets opened fire, the stars lit up with blazing weapons, energy bolts, torpedoes, beams of light tearing across the void. The void shook with violence as thousands of alien weapons slammed against the human fleet. When the light faded, the silence returned. The human ships remained untouched, their shields absorbing the fury as if it were nothing. Then they answered, their weapons lit the darkness brighter than suns, beams sharper than death tearing through alien hulls. Whole cruisers split apart in moments, entire wings vanished without a sound. Commanders screamed orders, but their voices were drowned by the panic of dying crews. The humans moved like hunters, precise and merciless, one strike here, one strike there, cutting through the alien fleet with strategy far beyond anything the defenders understood. Every move calculated, every blow crushing the spirit of their enemies. Alien ships tried to regroup, tried to flank, tried to overwhelm with numbers, but the humans had already predicted every attempt. Their fleet shifted fluidly as if one mind commanded them, their formations unbroken, their silence never ending. The defenders fought bravely, their courage desperate, their weapons burning hot, but courage was not enough, numbers were not enough against the legend. Screams filled the channels as commanders begged for reinforcements, as ships called for help only to vanish in fire. The void was littered with wreckage, glowing pieces of ships drifting aimlessly, bodies frozen in silence. And still the humans advanced, their flagship at the center glowing with power greater than anything the galaxy had seen before, its weapons firing with terrifying calm, each blast tearing through entire squadrons. Its shadow stretched across the battlefield like a hand crushing hope. The defenders tried to strike at it, focusing every weapon, every ship upon the giant, but its shields absorbed everything without faltering, and its weapons cut them down like wheat before a blade. Hours passed, though to the survivors it felt like days. The defenders lost fleet after fleet until their unity shattered, fear breaking them apart. Some ships fled, engines burning as they ran for safer stars. Others fought to the last, their captains refusing to surrender even as their crews were consumed in fire. The battlefield became chaos, wreckage drifting endlessly among stars stained with light and blood. Just when the defenders thought they had slowed the human advance, when their desperate sacrifice seemed to push back the shadow, the scanners screamed again, a second wave arriving larger than the first, even more ships emerging from the dark. The galaxy's defenders stared in despair as thousands more human vessels filled the void, blotting out the stars. The survivors realized with horror that what they had fought, what had already shattered them, had not been the full fleet, it had only been the beginning. The supreme commander of the defenders sat in silence on his flagship, his claws trembling as he watched the new human wave form ranks. He whispered that the myths were true, all of them true. His officers demanded orders, his soldiers looked to him for courage, but he had no answer, no strategy, no hope. He simply stared at the endless tide of ships and knew the galaxy was no longer theirs. Across the burning system, signals of distress spread to every world. People watched from their homes as the broadcasted images showed their fleets collapsing, their defenders dying, their leaders trembling. Riots erupted as civilians begged for escape, ships filled to bursting, fleeing into the core worlds, but no distance felt safe, not anymore. The humans continued their advance, methodical, relentless, never speaking, never negotiating, only fighting with silence and fire. Each move told the galaxy the same truth: humanity had returned, and they were stronger than ever before. In the shattered remains of a cruiser, a young alien soldier floated among debris, his body bruised, his breath shallow, his helmet cracked. He looked out at the endless human fleet glowing in the distance, and he whispered to himself a word that had been forbidden for generations, a word that now burned brighter than stars: human. His voice faded as the cold took him, his body drifting with thousands of others into the void. The battle became legend before it even ended. Those who survived carried stories that no one could ignore, stories of ships that moved like shadows, of weapons that burned through entire armadas, of a fleet so vast it blotted out the heavens, and a silence that weighed heavier than any scream. The survivors told their people, and their people told the galaxy, and soon no one doubted, no one denied. Everyone knew humanity had returned, and nothing would ever be the same. The war nobody wanted had begun, and it was only the first chapter. The humans had shown their strength, but they had not yet revealed their purpose. They had spoken only once, and their silence was filled with more terror than words could hold. And as their endless fleet stretched across the stars, the galaxy trembled, wondering not if they could be stopped, but if they ever truly wanted to be. The galaxy was broken after the great battle. Wreckage drifted through space, entire fleets gone, commanders dead, soldiers lost, hope burned away like dust. The survivors carried terror home with them. The name of humanity spread faster than fire across dry fields. In every station, every colony, every hidden world, beings whispered about the human fleet. They spoke of black ships that swallowed the stars. They spoke of silence heavier than war horns. They spoke of weapons that cut through anything they touched. Leaders across systems called secret meetings, their faces pale, their voices low. They tried to speak with confidence, but the truth was heavy. Even the strongest leaders shook when they remembered the fleets destroyed in hours. Some argued they must negotiate, some demanded to prepare defenses, others whispered that running and hiding was the only chance. Entire civilizations sent ships away, carrying families into the deep, hoping to escape before the humans arrived. On the core worlds, panic spread faster than laws could control. Civilians filled spaceports, desperate to leave. Entire industries collapsed as fear killed trade. Black markets bloomed, selling false maps of safe zones or secret paths through the stars. Priests declared the end had come. Children asked their parents if the humans would eat them. Soldiers drilled harder, though many could not sleep, their dreams filled with fire and silence. Among the chaos, one thing became clear: the humans were not finished. The fleets were seen again, moving through unguarded systems. Their ships did not stop to explain. They did not take planets. They did not claim resources. They only moved forward, leaving ruins of fleets that dared to stop them. The pattern was strange. No one understood it. They struck military forces but ignored colonies. They destroyed warships but left cities untouched. This made the fear worse. No one knew what humanity wanted, and the silence became unbearable. In the council chambers of the Great Federation, arguments exploded. One ambassador slammed his fists, demanding communication with humanity. Another hissed that humans do not talk, humans only kill. One commander declared that they must send every remaining ship to stand together again, but another reminded him that unity had failed the last time and would fail again. The council could not agree, every voice rising higher until the chamber shook with noise. Then a message arrived, a signal cut through every defense system across the galaxy. No one understood how it broke through walls. No one understood how it carried across such distances. It was not a broadcast, it was a presence. The image of a human face appeared across every screen, every world, every ship, a face made of shadows and fire, the eyes dark but burning with unspoken strength. The voice came simple and slow. "We are humanity, we have returned." The words rang heavy across the stars. No one dared to speak after the voice faded. Silence returned, but it was not the same silence. It was a silence filled with questions, with panic, with terror, because finally humanity had spoken, and those 4 words were enough to shatter every illusion. Across the galaxy priests fell to their knees, some called humans gods, some called them demons. Scholars searched old archives desperate for forgotten records about ancient wars against mankind. Families clutched one another unsure if the humans meant salvation or destruction. Soldiers looked to their commanders for courage, but commanders stared at the screens, unable to move, unable to breathe. In hidden corners, secret groups formed, small councils of admirals and spies speaking without the knowledge of their governments. They agreed on one thing: only someone must learn the truth of what the humans wanted. They debated sending envoys, but none volunteered. No one believed an envoy would survive. No one believed the humans would answer without fire, until one alien captain spoke, a veteran of the last battle, scarred, burned, haunted, but alive. He said he would go. The others called him mad, but he did not care. His eyes burned with determination. He said his crew would follow, and if they died they would at least learn something. He took his small ship, a vessel scarred with human fire, and pointed it into the path of the moving fleet. His crew begged him to turn back, begged him not to risk their lives, but he reminded them that death was already coming this way. If they did nothing, their end would be the same. The ship moved through dark space scanners, screaming as the human fleet appeared before them, black giants stretching across stars, weapons ready, engines glowing. The alien crew shook in terror, every instinct telling them to run, but the captain ordered the ship forward. He sent a single message: we wish to speak. For long moments nothing happened. The human ships did not fire, they did not respond, they only drifted forward in silence. The alien crew wept, certain that death was moments away. Then lights shifted across the largest human ship, and a single word returned: speak. The alien captain trembled as he sent his message: we do not understand why you have returned, we do not understand what you want. If you mean to destroy us, then say it. If you mean to rule us, then say it, but do not leave us in silence. The human response came not in words but in action. The flagship opened a channel, not with sound, not with language, but with vision. The alien captain saw images burned into his mind, images of ancient wars, humanity standing alone against endless enemies, fighting until their worlds burned but never surrendering, images of betrayal, other species uniting to destroy humanity, breaking their cities, burning their skies, leaving only myths and whispers. The final message was clear: we remember. The alien captain fell silent, his crew shaken to their core. They understood humanity had not returned for conquest, humanity had returned for vengeance. He sent the message back to the galaxy, his words spreading faster than ships, faster than trade, faster than hope: humanity remembers the betrayal, humanity has not forgiven. Panic turned into despair. Leaders whispered of their ancestors' crimes. The archives told stories of a war so ancient many had dismissed it as legend, but it was true. Their people had joined the ancient alliance to destroy mankind. They had wiped out human colonies, hunted them across stars, and thought them finished, thought them gone. But humanity had survived, hidden, rebuilt, grown stronger, and now they had returned. In every capital world shadows grew heavier, soldiers prepared not for defense but for judgment. Families cried, knowing the past sins of their ancestors had awoken a storm they could not stop. The galaxy trembled as the humans moved forward. Their silence now understood, their message clear: they would not stop until the debt was paid. The alien captain who had faced the humans became both hero and curse. Some called him brave for learning the truth, others cursed him for spreading despair, but he did not care. He had seen the fire in human eyes. He knew their fury was older than empires, older than federations, older than any memory left in the stars. He knew there would be no peace, no treaty, no surrender. Still some leaders refused to believe. They argued that humanity could be reasoned with, that vengeance could be calmed. They sent envoys, diplomats, priests, warriors. None returned. Every ship vanished into the dark, never seen again. Some said the humans killed them, some said the humans kept them, but no proof ever returned, only silence. The human fleet continued forward, burning through fleets that dared resist, ignoring worlds that bowed, ignoring voices that begged. They moved like a tide, unstoppable, endless. Their weapons spoke for them, their silence louder than any demand, and the galaxy knew the reckoning had begun. In hidden corners desperate voices rose. Some planned rebellion against their own leaders, saying it was better to fight than die waiting. Some formed cults worshipping humanity, calling them the true rulers of the stars. Others tried to run further into the dark, but the dark offered no safety, only the fear of what would come next. The galaxy no longer asked if humanity could be stopped. The galaxy only asked how long until they reached the core, how long until the old debts were paid, how long until the myths became their end. And above it, all the human fleet moved like a shadow across the heavens, their silence a promise, their fire a memory, their return a curse on those who had forgotten. Humanity had spoken, they had returned, and they would not forgive. The human fleet spread further across the stars, leaving broken warships behind them, their black vessels gliding through the void with no pause, no explanation. The galaxy trembled before their march, whole systems surrendered before a single shot was fired, because everyone now understood what the humans wanted. They wanted the galaxy to feel what they had once felt. They wanted everyone to remember the betrayal and the cost. In the core worlds, fear became the air people breathed. Markets closed, streets emptied, armies filled the skies, not because anyone believed they could win, but because leaders demanded it. Propaganda screens showed brave soldiers ready to fight, but behind the images the soldiers themselves whispered of doom. Some deserted, vanishing into the outer systems, others begged to be sent far away rather than wait for the shadow of human ships to appear. The Council of the Great Federation was a chamber of chaos, every meeting filled with shouting and rage. Ambassadors demanded plans, admirals demanded reinforcements, priests demanded repentance, but no answer could silence the fear. One voice said they must beg for mercy, another demanded they strike before the humans reached them, but each plan collapsed when someone reminded them of the last fleets that had been annihilated in minutes. In hidden rooms, secret groups formed. Some believed the only way to survive was to betray others. They suggested sacrificing weaker races, offering them as shields against the humans. Others whispered about ancient weapons locked away in forbidden archives, things so dangerous they had been hidden for centuries. The council argued until their voices broke, but the humans kept coming, their silence heavier than any threat. Across the outer colonies, the story spread faster than light. Families packed their lives into cargo ships, fleeing into the dark. Convoys of refugees stretched across space, but even as they ran, they knew the truth: the humans could find them anywhere. There was no distance that could save them. On one world, a priest declared that the humans were not enemies but saviors. He claimed that the galaxy had lived too long in arrogance and lies, and that the humans had returned to cleanse the stars. Thousands followed him, filling temples with prayers, begging the humans to come and deliver judgment. They raised banners of humanity's ancient symbol, though they did not understand it, and called themselves the Chosen. When news of their movement reached the council, panic grew. Some feared the humans would use these cults as allies, others feared the humans would punish them first. Among the fleets, a small group of admirals whispered about a final stand. They said it was better to die fighting than wait for slow destruction. They gathered ships from across loyal systems, building a massive force larger than the one that had already failed. They told their crews this was the last hope, this was the line that could not be broken, but in their hearts even they did not believe their words. They were only trying to give their soldiers something to hold on to as they prepared for the storm. Meanwhile, the alien captain who had once spoken to the humans wandered the stars carrying guilt. His name was cursed in many worlds because he had revealed humanity's true purpose. Others hailed him as a prophet, but he carried only silence, his mind filled with the vision the humans had burned into him. He could not eat, he could not sleep, he heard their words every time he closed his eyes. We remember he tried to warn the leaders that negotiation was impossible, that the humans would not stop, but they ignored him. Some even tried to silence him, but his voice kept spreading and his words carried more weight than the council's decrees. As the human fleet drew closer, systems fell into despair, suicides rose, armies collapsed without a fight. The humans did not need to fire a weapon to destroy civilizations. Their presence alone broke the will of billions. In one system, entire cities turned off their lights and pretended to be dead, praying the humans would pass them by. In another, the leaders sent all their soldiers into space to fight, knowing they would be slaughtered but hoping the sacrifice might slow the humans for even a single day. The humans never explained themselves, they never demanded surrender, they never accepted offers of peace. They only moved forward, their black ships dark against the stars, their silence more terrifying than any scream. At last the great fleet of the Federation gathered, a wall of ships stretching across the void, weapons, armed engines burning, every species represented, every flag raised. This was the last stand. The admirals declared no more running, no more hiding. Humanity must be stopped here or the galaxy would end. Soldiers spoke to their families one last time, lovers exchanged final words, children listened to voices that would never return. The fleet braced itself for the storm. The human fleet arrived without warning, their ships emerging from the dark like shadows, with eyes, weapons glowing softly. No banners, no words, only silence. The admirals shouted orders, ships moved into formation, cannons lit the sky, and the great battle began. The first wave of fire struck the humans, but it vanished against their shields like dust against stone. The human fleet answered with silence, then light brighter than suns. Ships exploded by the dozens. The wall of the Federation shattered in minutes. Chaos filled the comms, screams of dying crews mixed with broken orders. Ships collided with each other as they fled, human weapons cut through them like knives through water. The admirals tried to rally, but their voices were drowned by the sound of destruction. The alien captain who had once faced the humans watched from a distance, his ship hidden at the edge of the battlefield. He had warned them, but still his heart broke as he saw the greatest fleet of the galaxy torn apart in less than an hour. He whispered a prayer for the dead, but he knew his prayer meant nothing against the fire of vengeance. The battle ended as quickly as it began. The human fleet drifted through wreckage like ghosts, their ships untouched, silent observers of the ruin they had created. They did not chase the survivors, they did not finish the wounded, they simply continued forward, leaving behind silence and ash. The galaxy fell into despair. Leaders who had survived the collapse of their fleets hid in bunkers. Priests screamed in temples that the end had come. Entire civilizations prepared for death. No one dared to speak of resistance anymore. Hope was a word that carried no meaning. But in the shadows of ruin, something unexpected stirred. Small groups of beings who had nothing left to lose began whispering together. They spoke of fighting not with fleets, not with weapons, but with truth. They believed if they could understand humanity, if they could uncover what the humans truly wanted, maybe there was a chance not for victory, but for survival. They began searching ancient records, digging through ruins of forgotten wars, hoping to find a key to the rage that burned within humanity. The alien captain was drawn to them, his haunted eyes seeing in them the same fire that once kept humanity alive. He told them what he had seen, he told them what the humans had shown him, and he swore that even if the galaxy fell he would not stop searching for a way to reach them, for a way to end the silence. As the human fleet pushed closer to the core, the galaxy held its breath. No one knew what would come next, but everyone knew the truth. The myths were no longer myths, the legends were real. The vengeance of humanity had returned, and nothing could stop it. The stars themselves seemed darker, the silence heavier. Every world, every fleet, every soul waited for the shadow to fall. And still the humans came. The human fleet pressed deeper into the galaxy, their black ships gliding without sound through the endless dark hole. Civilizations watched the stars with dread, waiting for the moment when those vessels would appear on the horizon of their worlds and blot out the light. Leaders had stopped giving speeches, soldiers had stopped pretending to be brave. Now there was only waiting for the humans to arrive, waiting for the silence that followed. In the core of the Federation, the last council met not in a great chamber but in a bunker hidden deep beneath their most fortified world. The air was stale, the walls heavy with fear. The leaders sat in a circle, their faces pale and their voices low. No one shouted anymore, no one argued. They knew words had lost their power. Some said they must surrender, though no one believed the humans would accept. Some said they must hide, though no one believed the humans would stop. Some said they must fight, though no one believed they could win. They asked each other the same question again and again: what do the humans want? And no answer came. No messenger had ever returned, no demand had ever been spoken. The humans offered no terms, no hope, only silence. On the worlds near the core, ordinary people lived each day as if it was their last. Families shared meals in silence, parents held children close. Old songs returned, songs about survival, about holding on even when all seemed lost in the shadows of fear. Small acts of kindness shone brighter than any star. Strangers shared food with strangers, soldiers who once threatened deserters now embraced them. People told stories about the old days when humans had walked among them as friends and foes, when they had fought beside them in ancient wars. They spoke the word human with both fear and wonder. The alien captain who had once faced the humans traveled with the group that searched for answers. They moved through ruins of forgotten archives, dust covering their hands. As they pulled old records from the dark, they read stories about the first wars, stories of betrayal, stories of broken treaties and shattered trust. They began to see the shape of humanity's rage. It was not random, it was not madness, it was memory, a wound so deep it had scarred their very soul. One record told of a moment when humanity had begged for help against an ancient threat. The council of that age had promised aid but had turned away at the last moment, leaving human worlds to burn. Billions had died while their so-called allies looked on, doing nothing. Humanity had survived, but the betrayal had carved itself into their bones. Generations had grown up remembering it, teaching their children never to forget. Now the fleet carried that memory across the stars and demanded the galaxy feel the same pain. The small group debated what to do. Some said the truth must be shared, that if the people of the galaxy knew what had been done they would rise together, not with weapons but with shame. They would call their leaders to account. They would face humanity not as enemies but as those who understood their suffering. Others said it was too late, that the humans would not listen, that the only path was to flee into the void and let the galaxy burn behind them. The captain said nothing. He listened, his eyes hollow, but in his heart he knew he could not run. As the human fleet drew closer, the group sent messages across secret channels. They told the story of the betrayal, they spoke of the old war, they shared humanity's pain not as an enemy but as a wound. Their words spread faster than fear, in markets, in temples, in barracks. Whispers grew louder, people repeated the story until whole crowds spoke it out loud. Humanity had been wronged, humanity had been abandoned, and now humanity had returned, not as legend but as judgment. On one world a gathering formed, thousands of voices raised together. They lit fires in the night and held banners of broken chains. They said the humans were not monsters, they were the mirror of the galaxy's sins, and if the galaxy wanted to survive it must face the truth, not with guns, not with fleets, but with memory. The movement spread across systems, whole planets, speaking the same words: we remember what was done, and we will not turn away again. The council tried to crush the movement. They called it treason. They sent soldiers to silence the voices, but the soldiers themselves refused. Many laid down their weapons, others joined the crowd, saying they too remembered the betrayal, because the story of humanity was no longer just their story, it was the story of everyone who had ever been abandoned, everyone who had ever been left behind. The human fleet reached the edge of the core. Their ships hung in the dark like a storm ready to break, weapons glowing, engines humming. Whole worlds trembled as they appeared. Children screamed, priests fell to their knees, leaders hid in fear, and the people waited for fire. But something different happened. Thousands of signals poured into the dark, not weapons, not threats, but words, voices from every corner of the galaxy speaking the truth, voices saying we remember, voices saying we understand, voices saying we will not turn away again. The human fleet did not fire, they did not move. For the first time since their return they paused. The silence stretched across the stars, heavier than ever before. The galaxy held its breath. On the bridge of the lead human ship, the commanders listened to the voices. They heard the words of children, the cries of soldiers, the prayers of priests. They heard the story of betrayal told not by humans but by aliens who had finally admitted the truth. The commanders stood in silence, their faces hard, but their eyes filled with shadows. They had expected resistance, they had expected lies, they had expected more betrayal, but instead they found memory, and memory was Something they understood. The alien captain who had once faced them sent a signal, his voice shaking. He said, "Humanity, we remember too. We were the ones who abandoned you. We were the ones who turned away, and I was blind. I cannot undo what was done, but I will not lie anymore. You were betrayed, and we carry that shame. If you must destroy us, then do it, but know this, we remember." The human fleet remained silent. The pause stretched so long that worlds thought it might never end. Then slowly the lead ship dimmed its weapons, the glow fading into darkness. One by one the other ships followed until the black fleet hung silent, unarmed in the void. They did not speak, they did not explain, they only turned their ships away from the core and began to move back into the endless dark. The galaxy watched in disbelief. Leaders wept, soldiers collapsed to their knees, families clung to each other. The humans were leaving, the threat was gone, but their silence remained, and that silence carried more weight than any victory, for the galaxy now understood what had truly happened. The humans had not come for conquest, they had come to remind them of what betrayal cost. They had come to carve their memory into the stars. As the black fleet vanished into the void, whispers filled the galaxy. Some said the humans would return one day if the galaxy ever forgot again. Some said the humans would never forgive and would watch from the shadows forever. Others said humanity had given the galaxy one final chance and that chance would never come again. The alien captain looked into the stars, his heart heavy but alive. He knew the humans would never speak to him again, but he also knew they had listened, and that was enough. He turned to his companions and said, "We must remember, we must never allow silence to become betrayal again." They nodded, their faces lit by a fragile hope. In the markets and the temples, in the streets and the homes, the people of the galaxy repeated the same words again and again. We remember the humans, we remember their pain, we remember their silence, and we will not forget." The stars were quiet but different now. The silence no longer promised destruction, but carried a warning carved deeper than any blade. As long as the galaxy remembered, it might survive, but if it forgot, the humans would return, and when they did there would be no second chance. The legend of humanity was no longer just a story, it was a truth written in fire and silence, a truth every being carried in their heart. The galaxy would never forget again. And in the endless dark the humans kept moving, their fleet silent, their purpose unknown, their rage no longer burning as bright, but never gone, watching, always watching, waiting for the day the galaxy proved whether it had truly learned. The myth had become memory, the memory had become truth, and the truth would last forever.